Hi everyone, welcome to Thone Salts number 5. It's hard to believe that we will be finishing 1 Timothy on Saturday. We will then spend the first 2 weeks of March studying 2 Timothy and finish up Titus on March the 24th. As that time is getting near, I am requesting suggestions for where to go next. Some options that you might consider might be the Gospel of John, which will be a 3-month study. The return after the Exile, that is Ezra and Nehemiah, and that's just under a month to do that one. The small epistles, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, 1st and 2nd Peter, and Jude. And this would be just a bit under a 3-month study. Or maybe the prophets of the Exile, Ezekiel and Daniel. Now this would be a 1+ month study. The plus here is to indicate that there may be more expanded than the blog versions, and this could reach even to 3 months, depending on how expanded it is. Another choice I'd like you to consider is that for some group of the lessons, the next group, which Bible translation should we be studying it in? We'd consider the KJV, the NKJV, and the ESV. Now, I am comfortable in studying these three. They're all translated from the same Greek texts. I'm not comfortable studying in anything translated from the minority text, which includes most other translations, or from any paraphrase Bible, which isn't a translation at all, of course. So with those questions in mind, and I'll be posting again the different ways you can contact me to put in your vote for what you would like to see next. So now, right into 1 Timothy chapter 5. Proper interaction within the church. The devotional for this lesson I call the servant's heart. And it comes from Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 12 through 17. So after he had washed their feet, and had taken his garments, and was set down again, he said unto them, Know you what I have done to you? You call me Master and Lord, and you say, Well, so I am. If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that you should do as I have done to you. Verily, verily, I say unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord, neither is he that is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, happy are ye if you do them. Now, thinking about this, Jesus had just washed his disciples' feet. And then he explains. He is teaching an object lesson. If he, whom they call Lord and Master, will take on the role of slave and wash their feet, they should similarly lower themselves to serve one another. He further elaborates that servants are not greater than their masters. So if masters will lower themselves to menial tasks, there is no shame and great glory for servants to do the same. He further points out that this is as true for his Father as it is for him. When they begin ministering with this attitude, they will have great joy. Now the introduction to the lesson. This chapter deals with appropriate interaction between pastors and church members, as well as interaction between church members and those receiving help from benevolent ministries. It also concerns financial concerns with respect to the paid church staff and respect to church leadership. it closes with more personal advice from Paul to Timothy. The first section is rather brief here. I call it the church family. It comes from 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, and the younger men as brothers, the elder women as mothers, the younger as sisters, with all purity. Paul gives instructions in church family by comparing church members to human families by the formula: older men are fathers, older women are mothers, younger men are brothers, and younger women sisters. And he encourages us to think about it, the rest of the lesson in that fashion. The second section is called Those in Need, and it comes from 1 Timothy chapter 5, verses 3 to 16. Honor widows that are widows indeed, but if any widow have children or nephews, let them learn first to show piety at home, and to requite their parents, for that is good and acceptable before God. Now she that is a widow indeed and desolate trusteth in God, and continueth in supplications and prayer night and day. But she that liveth in pleasure is dead while she liveth. And these things give in charge, that they may be blameless. But if any provide not for his own, and specifically for those of their own house, he has denied the faith, and is worse than an infidel. Let not a widow be taken into the number under 80 years old, having been the wife of one man, well reported of for good works, if she have brought up children, if she has lodged strangers, if she has washed the saints' feet, if she has relieved the afflicted, if she has diligently followed every good work. But the younger widows refuse, for when they have begun to wax wanton against Christ, they will marry, having damnation, because they have cast off their first love. And withal they learn to be idle, wandering about from house to house, and not only idle, but tattlers, and also busybodies, speaking things which they ought not. I will therefore that younger women marry, bear children, guide the house, give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. For some have already turned aside after Satan. If any man or woman that believeth have widows, let them relieve them, and let not the church be charged, that it may relieve them that are widows indeed. That's a lot of words there. In these verses, Paul gives his recommendations about how to deal with widows. He clearly states that it is the church's responsibility to care for widows that have no recourse. He, however, sees a bigger picture of these situations. It seems both opportunities allowed by this situation as well as possible negative outcomes or mishandlings. He first notes that the adult children should have the responsibility of caring for their widowed mother, if they exist. He then said that a true widow is 60 years old or older, having no other way to be cared for. Another requirement is being known for her good works, for others, and for God's kingdom. He says that younger women are likely to become problematic with gossip and being busybodies. Thus, young women should remarry, have children, and be devoted to their families, behaving themselves. My opinion now. I believe that Paul, speaking for God, intended these to be general guidelines and not absolute truths, since this would have banned Anna in the temple from service there for her first 40 or so years of widowhood. And that comes from Luke 2:36 and 37. And there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. She was a great age, and has lived with a husband 7 years from her virginity. And she was a widow of about 84 years, which departed not from the temple, but served God with fastings and prayers day and night. So she was in the temple as a widow for 88 years, and was it appears, a very great servant of the Lord when she was there. So for her not to be allowed to be a widow in the temple simply because she wasn't 60 years old yet would have been really ridiculous. The next comments were about church leaders, and this comes from 1 Timothy 5, verses 17 to 21. Let the elders that rule well be counted worthy of double honor, especially they who labor in the word and doctrine. For the Scripture saith, Thou shalt not muzzle the ox that treadeth out the corn, and the laborer is worthy of his reward. Against an elder receive not an accusation, but before 2 or 3 witnesses, them that sin rebuke before all, but others may also fear. I charge thee before God and the Lord Jesus Christ and the elect angels, that thou observe these things without preferring one before another, doing nothing by partiality. So there's a couple of areas that are covered here. First of all, Paul turns to an old question: the financial stability of church leaders. He quotes Old Testament scriptures to show that God expects His teachers, preachers, and prophets to be taken care of financially. Finally, he touches on church discipline as regards church elders. He reiterates that the accusations against an elder is the same as an accusation against any other member of the flock. All should be treated with the same sternness, equity, and compassion. And then in the final section for today, Paul has some special instructions for Timothy. And these instructions relate to what's good for him in his particular situation. This comes from 1 Timothy 5, 22 through 25. Lay hands suddenly on no man, neither be partaker of another man's sins. Keep thyself pure. Drink no longer water, but use a little wine for thy stomach's sake, and thine often infirmities. Some men's sins are open beforehand, going before to judgment, and some men's they follow after. Likewise, also the good works of some are manifest beforehand, and that they that are otherwise cannot be hid. So this chapter ends with this personal advice. First of all, Timothy is to be pure and not suddenly against someone and not receiving advantage from another's sins. Secondly, he is not to drink uncertain water, but rather wine. And we believe in this case we're talking about grape juice, not alcoholic beverage, because of his stomach troubles. Apparently, it was well known to Paul that Timothy had a weak stomach. It is sometimes obvious that men are sinners, and so Timothy is not to associate with them when it is obvious that they are a sinner. And finally, it is sometimes obvious that men have good works. These men he should associate with. Now, in conclusion, the church should be an example of the Lord's loving kindness. This is true especially to those within it. All members should be respected by others and treated as close family. Those who truly need help should be served by the church. Widows without resources should be provided for, as well as pastors and other church leaders. Also, weaknesses in individual members should be attended to and helped by all for the general good and strength of the church. And finally, and this is real wisdom here, members should think before they act, and they're thinking with wisdom and with discretion. So that concludes today's lesson, and we will conclude the 1 Timothy part of the lessons on Saturday the 27th. Before I go, I'd just like to mention again that I would appreciate your interactions either by the various emails and different methods that are listed for communication, as well as the most obvious one of those that are actually within the YouTube section, where you can join, become a follower, like what Facebook would call a follower. It's called a subscriber in YouTube. There's a thumbs up or a thumbs down that you can click depending upon how you felt about the actual lesson. And when you have become a subscriber, then there's a bell that you can click on or touch to give you basically notifications that a new video is available. So we hope that you can contact us. Remember the questions that I asked. I'll be asking those same questions again in written form on this channel by next week or this Saturday, and hope that you can answer some of those questions for me so that I'll know where to go from here. So until then, have a good rest of the week, and we'll see you on Saturday. Bye-bye.